The Science of Voice and Body Language, published by Veridian, Chapter 1. There's a moment in nearly every conversation when something unspoken carries more weight than the words themselves. It happens in job interviews, in whisper confessions, in the cramped back row of a lecture hall. A pause, a tilt of the head, the warmth of the voice. Any one of these can change how a sentence lands, whether a promise is believed or whether an idea takes root. That invisible architecture is what this book is about. The science and craft of voice and body language, and how learning to read and shape them transforms the way you connect, persuade, and lead. If you've ever watched a speaker whose presence felt magnetic, you probably noticed two things at once: the way their voice moved through the room, and how their body framed the message. Those two elements are siblings. Voice carries nuance, pitch, rhythm, volume, timbre, and body language provides context. Posture, gestures, eye contact, micro-expressions. Together they form a richer message than any sentence could deliver alone. This book doesn't promise tricks or manipulative shortcuts. Instead, it offers practical understanding grounded in how human minds actually process signals. You'll learn why certain gestures soothe, why certain vocal patterns persuade, and how small, repeatable adjustments yield big shifts in how others perceive you. Why study this? Because nearly every human interaction depends on nonverbal cues. Hiring decisions, first impressions, negotiations, romantic attraction, parenting, all rely in part on subtle signals our brains evolved to read. The voice and body language operate both like public performance and private conversation. We send messages to others and to ourselves. When you change the way you breathe, you change your physiology and your emotions. When you lean forward, you invite closeness. When you mirror another person's expression, you signal empathy. These are not mystical arts. They're patterns with predictable effects. The better you understand the patterns, the more intentional you become in how you present yourself and how you interpret others. This introduction will sketch the territory, give you a map of what's ahead, and most importantly, invite you to experiment. Chapters ahead will move from the body's base architecture to the tiniest facial flicker. You'll begin with posture and breath, the foundation for a voice that carries confidence. You'll explore the physics and psychology of sound, how vocal fold vibration, resonance, and prosody shape how words feel. We'll examine facial expressions and micro-expressions and how they betray honest emotion or mask it. We'll dig into gestures and proxemics, how physical space regulates relationships, and into cultural differences that make the same gesture mean very different things across contexts. Practical chapters will give you exercises you can practice in 10 minutes a day, breath drills, vocal warm-ups, stand adjustments, observational labs to sharpen your ability to read others. I want to be clear about one guiding principle. Authenticity matters more than perfection. People can feel when an action is forced or mechanical. The best communicators are not imitating a set of poses. They are cultivating responses that come from an informed place inside them. The goal is not to become someone else, but to become a better version of yourself, more persuasive and more present, by aligning your voice and body with your message. Science supports this. Acting as it can influence internal states. A confident posture can lower cortisol. A steady breath can reduce anxiety. But this must be applied ethically. Use these skills to bridge understanding, to advocate for good ideas, to connect, not to manipulate or deceive. Another practical point. Context is king. A loud, booming voice might make you sound confident in a stadium and abrasive in a coffee shop. A slow cadence can communicate calm in a crisis and boredom in a brainstorm. The book emphasizes adaptability. Reading the room, choosing the appropriate register, adjusting proximity to fit the relationship and setting. You'll learn how to calibrate, when to step forward, when to soften, when to let silence breathe, and how to repair missteps when your signals misalign with your intent. You'll also encounter the science behind these effects, but I've kept it readable. Neuroscience and social psychology offer powerful insights. Mirror neurons and embodied cognition explain why mimicry smooths rapport. Prosodic patterns in the auditory cortex explain why certain intonations grab attention. Wherever useful, I'll summarize the findings and translate them into actionable practice. You won't need a lab coat to use this material, just curiosity and willingness to try small experiments with your own voice and body. Expect practical exercises, short observational labs you can do in public without anyone noticing, and reflection prompts that help you make these practices your own. For many readers, the first real breakthroughs come not from memorizing a list of gestures, but from simple awareness. Noticing how your shoulders climb when you're anxious, hearing how your pitch rises at the end of a sentence when you're insecure, recognizing how your hands open when you want someone to trust you. Awareness is the first lever. Practice is the second. A word on cultural sensitivity. Body language is deeply cultural. Nods, eye contact norms, personal distance, and hand gestures can vary widely. Later chapters discuss cultural variations and suggest respectful ways to learn local norms when traveling or working in diverse teams. The skills taught here are adaptable, not prescriptive. When in doubt, observe and mirror with humility. Finally, this book is written as a conversation, not a lecture. I've written it in a human voice because these topics are about human connection. You'll find short stories and examples, not to entertain you, although I hope they do, but to make abstract ideas memorable. Whether you want to improve your public speaking, be a more present partner, or lead with more authority, the following chapters give you a toolkit. Start small. Try one exercise. Notice what changes. Turn the page and begin with the foundation, your body's posture and the breath that powers your voice. If you can learn to stand with ease and breathe with intention, you'll already have built a stage on which your words will be heard differently. In the next chapter, we'll explore exactly how posture shapes emotion, how breath shapes tone, and which practical routines you can practice in 5 minutes each morning to show up grounded and ready. Chapter 2. Stand still for a moment and notice what your body is doing. Where are your shoulders? Is your weight balanced on both feet or pitched forward toward your toes? Is your chest open or caved? Now take a slow breath in and let it out. Did that change anything? For most of us, posture and breath are the silent scaffolding of how we feel and how others experience us. When you learn to shape that scaffolding, your voice follows, your presence deepens, and your nervous system learns a new set point for calm and confidence. Posture is not a costume you put on. It is a habit system to be retrained. The simplest, most useful posture practice is neutral alignment. Feet roughly hip-width apart. Weight distributed evenly through the feet, knees soft, not locked. Pelvis neither tipped dramatically forward nor tucked under. Spine long but relaxed. Shoulders resting down and back. Chin level. That description can feel abstract until you add a few physical cues. Imagine a string gently pulling crown of your head straight up. Feel a small space between your shoulder blades as if a softball resides there. Let your ribs sit over your pelvis, not flaring forward. These cues help your breath find its natural place in the diaphragm, which is the single most important muscle for a voice that feels grounded. Why does posture matter so much? First, biomechanically, the body configured in alignment allows the lungs and diaphragm to work efficiently. Slumped posture compresses the chest and limits the diaphragm's range, producing shallow, rapid breaths and a voice that sounds thin or strained. Second, posture feeds the brain through a loop of sensory input. When your shoulders are open and your chest is lifted, your nervous system interprets that as a less threatened state. Cortisol drops, heart rate becomes steadier, and your thinking becomes clearer. This is not magic. It's embodied physiology. Small changes cascade into measurable shifts in mood and vocal quality. Breath is where posture and voice meet. Most people breathe from the chest when stressed, short, quick inhales, barely any exhale. That pattern triggers a fight or flight tone. By contrast, diaphragmatic breathing, which feels like the belly expanding on the inhale and softening on the exhale, signals safety. It stimulates the vagus nerve, which calms the nervous system and gives your voice more steady airflow and resonance. A reliably calm, resonant voice is rarely produced by a person who is breath-starved. Here is a practical exercise you can do anywhere in 5 minutes to rewire posture and breath. Stand with your back against the wall, feet shoulder-width apart and about a hand's width from the wall. Lightly press your sacrum, the lower back just above the buttocks, against the wall so your spine is in contact. Let your shoulders drop and roll back until the back of your head touches the wall too. If this is too intense, step slightly away from the wall. Now place one hand on your upper chest and one hand on your belly. Breathe slowly, aiming for the belly hand to rise more than the chest hand. Count 4 seconds in, pause 1 second, 6 seconds out. Repeat 10 times. This trains the diaphragm and gives proprioceptive feedback. Your body learns what it feels like to be open and to breathe efficiently. Once you practice against the wall, practice the same breath without the wall cue. Do 5 diaphragmatic breaths before you start a meeting, give a presentation, or make a call. The exhale should be a touch longer than the inhale. That slight emphasis on exhalation calms the nervous system and steadies vocal folds, so your voice feels controlled, not breathy. Another subtle but powerful posture tool is weight distribution. Many people carry stress in a forward lean, especially when engaged with screens. When you stand for a conversation, allow your weight to sink into your heels slightly. This encourages a grounded stance and prevents a nervous forward pitch. If sitting, plant both feet on the floor and feel the contact. This simple grounding will keep your upper body freer. When you prepare to speak, shift your weight evenly, breathe, and imagine your voice as an exhale that travels out from the center of your pelvis through an aligned column of breath and posture. Gesture and head position are part of posture too. A lifted, slightly forward chin projects engagement. A chin tucked down shrinks presence. But avoid the chin high, neck tense trap. The best projection comes from a lifted sternum and relaxed neck. Think open heart, long neck. Gestures should originate from the torso, not just the hands. When your posture supports your core, gestures feel purposeful and anchored. When posture is poor, gestures seem fidgety. You can accelerate learning with small observational labs. Over a day, notice 3 times you feel anxious or small, maybe before a call or in a crowded room. Stop for 30 seconds and do the wall breathing drill. Notice how your voice feels when you say the first sentence afterward, even if only to yourself. Make a quick note on your phone. Posture plus breath equals voice steadier. Repetition is the key. These micro practices compound. Do not confuse rigid posture with presence. Forced stiffness reads as false. Authentic presence is a paradox. It's both relaxed and intentional. To practice that balance, try this 2-minute micro routine before any important interaction. Stand comfortably, tune into the muscles that feel tense, and deliberately soften them. Face, jaw, neck, shoulders. Now imagine the string at the crown of your head. Lift gently and let your posture lengthen. Breathe diaphragmatically for 8 cycles with a 4 to 6 inhale to exhale ratio. Smile softly during the last two breaths. Smiling engages facial muscles that open the voice and invite connection. This routine relaxes excess tension while aligning your body, so your voice can be more resonant and your gestures more expressive. There are also vocal consequences to how you breathe. If your inhale is shallow, the vocal folds close and open erratically. The result is a voice that wavers or runs out of air mid-sentence. Practice speaking on the exhale, immediately following a diaphragmatic breath. Start with short phrases, then increase length. Notice how much more control you have over volume and pace. Singing warm-ups, humming, sirens, and lip trills are not just for singers. They train breath flow and vocal fold closure and can be done in a stairwell or bathroom where privacy is available. Finally, remember that posture and breath are social signals. When you sit across from someone and open your torso slightly, maintain soft eye contact, and breathe calmly, you communicate calm and invitation. When you slump or breathe shallowly, you send the opposite signal. These cues are often subconscious for both parties. That means your internal state and your external signal speak simultaneously. Changing one changes the other. This chapter isn't a prescription to stand robotic or to force smiles. It's an invitation to practice a few reliable scaffolds that make your natural voice and body more available. Start with the wall breathing drill, the 2-minute micro routine, and the habit of planting your feet before you speak. Over weeks, you'll notice less tension, a fuller voice, and more intentional gestures. Those are the small, steady changes that make you feel different and make others hear you differently. In the next chapter, we'll move from mechanics of breath and alignment into the acoustic science of the voice itself. Pitch, resonance, timbre, and the patterns that hold attention. Chapter 3. If posture and breath build a stage, the voice is the actor who fills it. In this chapter, we move from the mechanics of support into the acoustic and expressive qualities that make a voice memorable: pitch, resonance, timbre, pace, and prosody. These terms sound technical, but you don't need a degree in acoustics to use them. Think of them as tools in your expressive toolkit. Each one changes how the same sentence is felt by a listener. A steady, warm, low pitch can make a promise sound reliable. A quick, rising pitch can make a question sound urgent or uncertain. Your goal is to learn how to choose and shape these tools so your words land the way you intend. Pitch is simply how high or low your voice sounds. Most people have a comfortable pitch range, the notes that feel natural and unforced. But within that range, there's room to play. Lower pitches tend to communicate authority and calm. Higher pitches can sound friendly or excited. That's why news anchors and experienced public speakers often habitually speak in the lower portions of their range. It creates perceived steadiness. But pitch alone isn't magic. If you force your voice artificially low, it will sound strained or insincere. Instead, think of lowering pitch as a gentle shift of intent. Allow your breath and posture to support a richer, slightly lower resonance rather than forcing your throat. Resonance is a physical space in which your voice vibrates: the chest, the mouth, the nasal cavities. When singers talk about placing sound in the chest or mask, they aren't performing mysticism. They're directing where the sound energy concentrates. Chest resonance feels fuller and often translates to warmth. Forward or mask resonance, the area around your nose and cheekbones, adds brightness and clarity that helps speech cut through noise. A helpful experiment is to hum at a comfortable pitch and place a finger lightly on your sternum and another on your cheekbones. Notice where you feel vibration. Try to move the hum between chest and mask. This awareness lets you shape timbre, your voice's color, so it fits the situation: warm for consolation, brightness for enthusiasm, authority for command. Timbre is a unique quality of your voice. Think of it as a fingerprint that makes your voice recognizable. Two people can say the same sentence at the same pitch and volume, and the difference in timbre is why one sounds persuasive and the other flat. Timbre is affected by everything from the shape of your throat to habitual tension to hydration. Improving timbre is mostly about reducing unnecessary tension, increasing resonance, and adding intentional variation. Simple vocal hygiene, staying hydrated, avoiding shouting, and warming up before prolonged speaking preserves timbre. If you're a habitual throat clearer or talker, try lip trills and gentle humming to lubricate and tune the voice before important conversations. Prosody is a musical architecture of speech. The rises and falls, the rhythm, the pauses, the stress patterns. Prosody is where meaning often lives more than in words themselves. Consider the sentence, "I didn't say you stole the money." With stress on different words, it can mean at least 6 different things. Prosody is how sarcasm, sincerity, excitement, and curiosity are transmitted. One way to practice prosody is to read a short paragraph out loud and deliberately change the emphasis and rhythm each time to convey different emotions. Curiosity, anger, warmth, boredom. Record yourself on your phone and listen back. You'll be surprised how much your meaning shifts with subtle changes. Pace and volume are the practical levers for clarity and engagement. Speaking too quickly compresses meaning and makes you sound anxious. Speaking too slowly risks sounding dull. Volume matters too. Too quiet, you lose authority and leave listeners straining. Too loud, you can dominate or seem aggressive. A useful rule of thumb, aim for pace and volume to match the emotional content and context. In a crisis, a slightly slower pace and measured volume convey control. In storytelling, a varied pace and dynamic volume keep listeners engaged. Practice pacing by breaking a paragraph into breath-sized chunks, short enough that you could comfortably finish the phrase on a single diaphragmatic exhale. Then speak with intentional pauses, and notice how each pause gives the next phrase more weight. Here are practical drills that combine these elements and fit into 5 to 10 minutes a day. Start with gentle humming for 1 minute to warm resonance. Move into lip trills or motorboat sounds for 30 seconds. These help balance airflow and reduce throat tension. Choose a short sentence you say often, a greeting, a brief introduction, and say it 5 times varying pitch. Each time, lower the pitch slightly and then bring it back. Next, read a 2-line paragraph and record it twice, once with even monotone delivery, once with dynamic prosody, varying pitch, pausing, and emphasizing key words. Compare the recordings. Practice the dynamic version until it feels natural. Another useful exercise is the sirens and snaps routine. Slide your voice up and down through your range on a single vowel. Imagine siren sounds. Then end each slide with a crisp snap syllable like ha. This trains smooth pitch control and clean closures of the vocal folds, which are crucial for projection and clarity. Finish with 3 slow, spoken phrases that you breathe for and pause after. This builds control and teaches you to use silence as a tool. Listening is as important as practice. Pay attention to voices that grab your attention. What is their pacing like? Do they use quiet moments or sudden volume changes? Do they put emphasis on unexpected words? Make brief notes. Then try to mimic one aspect, maybe the pacing or the breath pattern, until it becomes integrated into your own style. Mimicry is not copying. It's learning different expressive options and making them yours. There are also small, high-leverage habits that change how your voice is perceived. Avoid upward inflection at the end of declarative sentences, unless you mean to invite input. Many people unintentionally use this as a hedge. Use strong consonants at the ends of sentences to increase clarity. Soft endings leave listeners guessing. And when you want to persuade, slow slightly and allow a pause before the most important phrase. That pause signals that something important is coming and gives listeners time to prepare to listen. Phone and virtual communication deserve special mention because the medium compresses frequency ranges and masks visual cues. In phone calls, smile before you speak. Smiling changes the shape of your mouth and adds brightness to the signal, and others can perceive it even without video. In video calls, check your mic level and set a comfortable distance from the microphone to avoid popping and clipping. Use the same diaphragmatic breath practices, so your voice remains steady across latency and compressed audio. Finally, remember authenticity. The most persuasive voices are not perfectly modulated machines. They are human, with cracks and idiosyncrasies. The aim is not to sterilize your voice, but to expand your range so you can choose how to sound, rather than being controlled by stress, tension, or habit. Keep a gentle curiosity. Record, listen, try one new drill for a week, then move on. Over time, those small, deliberate changes compound into a voice that conveys what you mean with honesty, clarity, and impact. In the next chapter, we'll zoom in on the face, expressions, microexpressions, and how tiny changes in the eyes and mouth guide the stories listeners believe. We'll learn how to read emotion quickly and how to let your face match your intent without slipping into theatricality. Chapter 4. Your face is a conversation in fast forward. Before a single word finishes an utterance, tiny shifts in the eyes, the mouth, or the brow have already started to tell a parallel story. Faces carry both the headline emotion and the footnotes. Broad expressions that announce joy or anger, and fleeting microexpressions that betray what someone is trying to hide or what they feel for only a split second. Learning to read and shape those signals isn't about becoming Sherlock Holmes. It's about becoming a better listener and a more honest presenter of yourself. Start with the obvious. Facial expressions are built from muscle groups that combine to form meaningful patterns. Some expressions are broad and voluntary, smiling for a camera, narrowing your eyes to look skeptical, while others are reflexive and brief, the microexpressions that flash across the face when emotion is strongest. Psychologists have identified a handful of basic emotions that the face reliably shows across cultures: happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and contempt. Those categories are heuristics, not straitjackets. Most human expressions are blends. What matters is learning to see both the broad strokes and the tiny accents. A Duchenne smile, the genuine kind, engages the muscles around the eyes as well as the mouth. It causes the cheeks to rise and creates crow's feet at the outer corners of the eyes. A polite, social smile sometimes only moves the lips. That difference matters because people unconsciously read sincerity in the eyes. Practically, this means that when you want to signal warmth, try allowing your eyes to participate in the smile. Think of a small, private memory that softens you as you smile. It often produces a more authentic expression. Microexpressions are different. They're involuntary and fleeting, often lasting a fifth of a second or less. They appear when a strong emotion is felt but then suppressed. Anger masks with neutral face, a flash of contempt before a polite nod. You won't reliably catch microexpressions at first. They require training your attention and patience. That training begins with slowing down your perception. Watch a short clip of people talking, a news interview, a drama scene, and silently pause after a sentence. Replay in slow motion and notice the tiny changes: an eyebrow twitch, a nostril flare, a quick tightening at the mouth's corner. Over time, your brain learns to register these as signals worth noting, not as noise. Important distinction: a microexpression is a clue, not a verdict. People mask feelings for many reasons: professional etiquette, politeness, fear of escalation. And a flash emotion doesn't automatically mean deception or malice. It means something happened internally that might matter. Your job as an attentive reader is to notice, hold curiosity, and, when appropriate, check it gently. For instance, if a colleague smiles or flashes contempt when you suggest an idea, you might later ask a private question. I may have misread this. How do you really feel about that? That approach preserves dignity and opens space for honesty. The eyes are particularly revealing. Eye contact, gaze direction, and micro movements carry nuance. Sustained, comfortable eye contact signals engagement. Quick averting may indicate discomfort or thought processing. Dilated pupils can reflect interest, though this is strongly influenced by light and other factors. So don't overread it. Blink rate often increases with stress. Notice clusters, multiple signals together. Tightened jaw, narrowed eyes, and a downward mouth are more reliable indicators than any single twitch. Pattern recognition beats one-off judgments. Facial congruence, when your face matches your words, is central to credibility. When your words say, I'm excited, but your face is flat, listeners sense a mismatch and may distrust you. Conversely, congruence amplifies trust. If you need to deliver bad news, a neutral, compassionate expression paired with measured tone and steady breath is more believable than a forced smile. Practice aligning face and voice in short role-play exercises. Speak a sentence with mismatched expressions, then repeat with congruence, and note the difference in felt authenticity. There are ethical lines. Reading faces is not a tool for manipulation. Use your observational skills to connect, to de-escalate, and to understand. If you notice someone's expression signaling distress, the kind response is curiosity, not confrontation. If you're tempted to call someone out for a micro-expression in public, pause. Public exposures humiliate and rarely create the openness you want. Instead, follow up privately and with care. Practical exercises will make these ideas useful. Try the mirror lab. Stand in front of a mirror and practice expressing small, raw emotions: mild annoyance, surprise, gentle concern, quiet pride. Hold each expression for a few seconds and notice what muscles engage. Try moving from a neutral face to each expression in slow motion and then in quick changes. This enhances muscular control and internal awareness. Then do the 2-second rewatch in your daily life. When you're on a call or at a meeting, make a habit of mentally freezing the last 2 seconds of someone's face before they start the next sentence. Ask yourself, what changed? What do I notice in the mouth, eyes, and brow? Over weeks, this sharpens your ability to read sequences rather than single frames. Another helpful drill pairs voice and facial intent. Record yourself telling a short story twice. Once keeping your face neutral, once letting your face reflect the emotions of the story. Listen back and notice which version sounds more convincing. Often the version with congruent facial expression will command more attention, even through audio alone. Part of the reason is that facial expressions change vocal production subtly via muscular linkages in the face and throat. Cultural display rules matter here. In some cultures, overt smiling with strangers is common. In others, it's reserved for close relationships. Eye contact that reads as honest in one culture can feel invasive in another. Learn local norms when you travel or work across cultures. When you're unsure, mirror conservatively and watch for the other person's comfort. If someone consistently averts gaze, reduce direct stare and use softer glances. When interacting with diverse teams, ask colleagues about norms. A short, respectful question like, how do you prefer we show agreement in meetings? is both practical and relationship building. Repairing facial mismatches is an important skill. If you notice later that your face betrayed a reaction, an eye roll caught on camera, a smirk that looked like contempt, address it directly and briefly. A simple line works. I want to acknowledge I made a face earlier that didn't match what I meant. I value this conversation. Short acknowledgments defuse misreadings and show emotional responsibility. Finally, use your face as a tool for presence, not performance. Tiny rituals. Soften your eyes before you enter conversation. Relax in the jaw when you feel tension. Help you be available. When you listen, let your face be an open field. Unclenched jaw, softened forehead, slight nods timed with breath. These small openings invite others to expand. Over time, you'll find that your face both reflects and shapes the emotional tone of your interactions. It listens, it answers, and when used with kindness, it helps others feel seen. In the next chapter, we'll move beyond the face to the choreography of gesture and hands. How motion organizes attention, the difference between illustrative and regulative gestures, and how to use movement to clarify rather than distract. We'll practice simple, repeatable gestures that make your points feel inevitable rather than forced. Chapter 5. Gesture is the punctuation of speech. Words give the proposition, but gestures tell the listener which parts matter, how to move through the idea, and sometimes what the speaker feels before the words arrive. When gestures and word work together, comprehension and trust increase. When they don't, listeners notice, often unconsciously, and the message loses power. This chapter treats gestures as an instrument. Learn the categories, practice a few reliable moves, and then build habits that feel natural and useful rather than theatrical. Start by naming the common types. Emblems are gestures with clear, conventional meanings. Thumbs up, a wave, the OK sign. Illustrators accompany speech and help visualize ideas. Spreading your hands to show size. Tracing a curve in the air to describe motion. Regulators help manage the flow of conversation. A small hand raised to yield the floor, a palm towards someone to stop an interruption. Adapters are unconscious self-soothing motions, rubbing the neck, twisting a ring, touching the face, and they're the ones to watch for and reduce when you want to appear composed. Each category has a role. The skill is using the right type at the right moment. Illustrators are the highest leverage gestures for clarity. Imagine saying the market split in two while holding your hands slightly apart and moving them in opposite directions. That simple image makes the sentence stick. Illustrators align audience attention with your ideas. They work best when they originate from the torso rather than the shoulders or wrists. Gestures that are rooted in core movement look intentional. Those that look like nervous twitching do not. A useful cue. Allow gestures to flow from the rib cage and belly as if your hands are an extension of a central axis. That anchoring keeps motion purposeful. Regulators are underrated. A calm, brief palm down as you lower your pace tells a crowd you're moving to a conclusion. A soft hand toward yourself can invite someone into a shared frame. Regulators are subtle and usually small. Their job is to coordinate social rhythm. Practice a gentle hold palm when you want to slow a conversation, and a light forward palm to invite someone else to speak. These are the gestures people notice, even if they can't name them. Emblems can be useful, but use them sparingly and culturally wisely. In some settings, a thumbs up is friendly. In others, it reads as offhand or even rude. When you use emblems, let them punctuate rather than lead. Save them for moments when a shared code reinforces the point. A collective cheer, a clear yes, or a ceremonial close. Adapters are the gestures to reduce. They leak stress. If you notice yourself touching your face, fiddling with a pen, or rubbing your neck, during important moments. That's a signal your nervous system is active. That's normal. Everyone does it, but it's also trainable. Replace adapters with neutral anchors. Hands lightly clasped in front at waist level. One hand loosely supporting the other wrist, or holding a small object, a pen, a slide advancer, that channels movement into the task. The goal is not to freeze. It's to replace unconscious motion with intentional motion. Gesture size and tempo matter. Bigger gestures read better in large rooms. Micro gestures work in close conversation. Calibrate to your context. If you're speaking to a panel in a conference hall, expand your gestures a touch and slow the tempo so they register. If you're in a one-to-one meeting, compress gestures and let micro-expressions carry more of the meaning. A practical exercise. Record yourself delivering a 2-minute explanation in 3 settings, standing as if on stage, seated in a small meeting, and on a video call. Watch how your gesture size and speed should change, and practice matching them to the camera or room. The 3-gesture rule is a simple habit that prevents both under and over gesturing. Aim to use roughly 3 purposeful gestures in a short paragraph or idea. First gesture equals set the scene. Second equals emphasize the turning point. Third equals signal the conclusion. That framework gives structure and makes your speech feel choreographed without being scripted. If you find yourself doing 10 gestures in paragraph, slow down and choose which 3 most clearly support the message. Anchoring gestures are a powerful tool for persuasion and memory. Pick a small, repeatable gesture, a very subtle palm up, a fingertip pinch, or a short outward sweep, and pair consistently with a key phrase or idea during practice. Over time, the gesture primes both you and the listener. When you use it at the moment of your main point, it draws attention and signals importance. Keep the gesture small and natural. If it's overdone, it becomes distracting. Mirroring deserves careful mention. Subtly matching someone's posture, tempo, or simple gestures increases rapport because people unconsciously like those who seem like them. The caveat is to be subtle and not literal. Copying exactly makes people uncomfortable. Instead, mirror the overall energy level and breathing rhythm, and occasionally reflect a simple hand position. If a colleague leans in, a slight forward shift mirrors attentiveness. Mirroring should be used to connect, not manipulate. Practical drills make these ideas stick. The gesture map exercise is one of the fastest. Choose a 5-sentence story you tell often, a short self-introduction, a product pitch, a personal anecdote. For each sentence, assign 1 purposeful gesture. Practice delivering the story while doing only those gestures. Record, watch, and adjust. Aim for gestures that start from the center of your body and move outward slightly. Then return to neutral. Another drill focuses on reducing adapters. Film yourself for 3 minutes during a casual practice conversation and mark each adapter, face touches, hair twirls, pen fiddles. For a week, before similar interactions, rehearse a neutral anchor, hands clasped at waist, and take 3 diaphragmatic breaths. Note the reduction in adapters and how your voice steadies. Small replacements work better than trying to eliminate behavior through willpower alone. Use objects wisely. Holding a pen, a phone, or a presentation remote can stabilize hands and give your gestures purpose. When you do hold something, let it be part of the choreography. Point with the remote to emphasize a slide. Rest the pen across your fingers when listening. Avoid constantly tapping or checking devices. Those habits read as an attention. Finally, remember cultural differences. Pointing with your index finger is common in some cultures and rude in others. The size, expressiveness, and meaning of gestures vary widely. When in a new culture, observe first and mirror conservatively. If you're leading a multicultural team, ask colleagues what gestures they find comfortable and which they don't. That question itself builds trust. Gesture is not decoration. When chosen and practiced, it structures attention, clarifies meaning, and broadcasts intent. Start with 3 purposeful gestures per idea. Anchor those gestures to key phrases. Replace adapters with neutral anchors and calibrate size to your stage. Over time, gesture will become an honest extension of your thought process, a way to make complex ideas visible and to invite others to follow. In the next chapter, we'll widen the lens to space and distance, proxemics, seating, and how arrangement of bodies in room shape status, intimacy, and conversation flow. Chapter 6. Space speaks. How close you stand, where you sit, the angle of your shoulders relative to another person. All of these are sentences in the silent language of proxemics. Even before you gesture or open your mouth, the physical arrangement of people in a room has said something about power, intimacy, comfort, and intent. Getting proxemics right is less about memorizing rules and more about learning to use space intentionally, to invite, to contain, to lead, or to yield. In this chapter, we'll explore the practical geometry of human interaction, seating, distance, orientation, and movement, and give you simple ways to shape the physical field so conversations go where you want them to go. Start with the basic distances that most people intuitively use. Intimate distance is reserved for close relationships, partners, close family, and is roughly within an arm's reach. Personal distance is the space of friends and comfortable colleagues, where casual conversation and small gestures feel natural. Social distance is a setting for formal interactions, interviews, and small group conversations. Public distance is for performances or speaking to larger groups. These categories are not hard lines. They overlap and shift depending on culture, context, and personality. The key is to be deliberate. If you need to signal warmth and rapport, move toward personal distance. If you need to assert authority or maintain neutrality, hold social distance. Seating arrangements are especially communicative. 2 people seated at a right angle to each other, side by side, feel collaborative. Directly across from each other on a table feels adversarial or formal. If you're negotiating, sitting beside someone angled slightly toward them, create a partnership frame. A face-to-face table positions you as opponents. In meetings, who sits at the head of the table matters less than who controls entry points and sightlines. If you want to flatten hierarchy, choose a circular or U-shaped seating plan where no one's back is the door and everyone can see one another. If you need to retain control during a difficult feedback session, for instance, arrange seating so you have clear visual and physical access to each person while maintaining an open, non-threatening posture. Movement through space also manages conversational flow. Entering a room sets a tone. When you approach a group, don't rush into middle. Pause at the edge, survey, and choose a place that signals your role. Leaders who habitually step into the center without checking and risk appearing domineering. Those who hang back may seem disinterested. A practical ritual is the 2-step entry. Stop at the periphery, make eye contact with a few people, then take 2 purposeful steps to your spot. That pause and the confirmation of connection smooths transitions and buys attention. Small adjustments change perceived status. Standing while others remain seated often confers authority, but it can also feel intimidating. If you need to lead a conversation without dominating, stand briefly to open or close a meeting. This gives your words extra weight. Then sit for dialogue. Control of vertical space matters. When you speak from the same seated level, you invite equality. When you stand, you signal leadership for that moment. On video calls, use camera height similarly. A camera slightly above, Eye level feels less imposing than one angled up from below. Proxemic mirroring is a subtle rapport tool. If someone leans forward, a slight lean forward in return increases connection. If they cross their arms, mirroring that exact posture tend to read as mimicry unless done gently. Instead, mirror the energy. Match the degree of openness, the tempo of movement, and the breathing rhythm. This creates a feeling of similarity without triggering discomfort. If someone violates your personal space in a way that feels too close, a soft step back and a steadying phrase, "Let's take a moment," preserves dignity while reestablishing distance. Crowd dynamics and staging deserve separate attention. When you speak to a small audience, move with intention. Use lateral steps to include different parts of the room rather than pacing anxiously. Place key visuals and people so you can shift orientation without turning your back on anyone. For panels or group interviews, sit at a slight angle to each other so the audience reads a collective conversation rather than a series of monologues. If you want people to interact, break the room into small clusters physically. Ask people to turn toward the person on their left and speak for 2 minutes. Physical repositioning changes mental frames quickly. Space can be used to de-escalate. When a conversation heats up, increasing distance calms arousal for many people. The body naturally relaxes when threatened cues, close proximity, constricted space, ease. If someone becomes loud or agitated, steady your breathing. Open your palms in a neutral gesture and take a measured step back while lowering your voice. That combination signals non-threat and models a downshift. If the setting doesn't allow space, create it by gently shifting orientation. Angle your body slightly away while maintaining engaged eye contact, which reduces a sense of confinement without abandoning the interaction. Cultural differences are central. In some cultures, close proximity signals warmth and engagement. In others, it violates comfort. Eye contact rules vary similarly. When working across cultures, observe first and follow local cues. If you must initiate, for example, in an interview with someone from a different culture, start at a conservative distance and let the other person guide closeness. Asking a brief, respectful question about norms. "Would you prefer we sit closer?" shows cultural humility and is usually appreciated. There are also practical tactics for reclaiming space gracefully. If you're interrupted in a meeting, rather than snapping, place an open palm toward the interrupter and say, "One moment, I'd like to finish this thought." That regulated gesture signals a boundary without hostility. If someone monopolizes the room physically, blocking sight lines or occupying central space, you can redirect by physically repositioning yourself near other participants or by inviting quieter members to a visible spot. "I want to hear from folks over here." Changing the room's physical rhythm redistributes social power. Virtual proxemics matters more than most people realize. Camera framing, background, and on-screen distance all send signals. A close camera crop, face filling the frame, reads as intimate. A wider shot increases perceived distance. A tidy, neutral background suggests professionalism. A busy background distracts. On calls, simulate in-person proxemics by adjusting camera angle to eye level, maintaining personal distance equivalent to a comfortable 2 arms length, and using pauses that mimic physical turn-taking. When you want to invite participation, physically lean forward to camera for a second, then return to neutral. It reads as an invitation even through pixels. Practical drills will build your proxemic fluency. The seating swap exercise is quick and revealing. At your next small meeting, deliberately sit in different positions across 3 meetings, head of the table, side, and center of a semicircle. Notice how your perceived authority, ease, and the group's behavior change. Journal one specific difference after each meeting. The edge entry drill practices graceful approaches. When entering a new room, pause at the edge for 2 breaths before joining. Note how people orient to you differently when you enter this way. Finally, remember that proxemics should serve your intent, not dominate it. Space is a tool for clarity and human exchange, not a trick to manipulate people. Use it to create safer, clearer interactions. Put people at a distance where they can think, position yourself to listen, and arrange settings that invite participation. When you are intentional about space, you reduce the guesswork in social signals and increase the chance that your words and body will be read the way you mean them. In the next chapter, we'll examine eye contact, gaze patterns, and listening posture in close detail. The tiny choreography of attention that makes people feel heard and understood. Chapter 7. Eyes are the headline of attention. They tell others where you're placing your focus, and they quietly report whether you're listening, judging, or planning your next sentence. But attention is more than a glance. It's choreography, the timing of looks, the micro movements that regulate turn-taking, the soft signals that say, I'm with you. This chapter is about the fine art of gaze and the companion skill of active listening. How to use your eyes, your face, and tiny body cues to make people feel heard, and how to manage your own attention so you actually listen rather than rehearse a reply. It helps to begin with the simplest truth. Real listening is rare. Most of us spend conversations composing our answers. The result is a kind of two-way monologue where both parties miss subtle information. Eye contact collapses that gap. When you meet someone's gaze for a moment longer than a passing glance, you signal full presence. But presence isn't staring, it's balanced engagement. A steady, calm gaze that breaks periodically to look slightly away, perhaps aside or down for a beat, reads as reflective and attentive rather than predatory. Small, rhythmic patterns of gaze let people know you're following the arc of what they say without demanding their eyes the whole time. Let's be practical about timing. In most conversational settings, comfortable eye contact is intermittent. Cluster a few seconds of focused gaze, then let your eyes drift for a second and return. That flow mirrors natural breathing and prevents the intensity that makes people defensive. If you're culturally uncertain, err on the side of shorter clusters and more frequent breaks. If the other person leans in and holds steady gaze, match that energy. The key is responsiveness. Let the other person's rhythm guide you rather than sticking to a fixed rule. Active listening pairs eye behavior with other signals that create safety. Leaning slightly forward, uncrossing your arms, softening the muscles around the mouth, and nodding lightly in time with phrases are all signals that say, I'm tracking you. Vocal encouragers, small sounds like, uh-huh, I see, or a reflective mem, reinforce visual cues and show continuous attention. They are not interruptions if used sparingly. They are the punctuation marks of empathy. Use them to scaffold silence, not to fill it. Silence is perhaps the most powerful listening tool. Many people rush to fill pauses because silence feels uncomfortable. Yet well-placed silence gives the speaker space to think and often yields the deepest content. When someone finishes a thought, resist the urge to immediately respond. Let 2 beats pass. If nothing more comes, a soft, clarifying question like, when you say that, what do you mean exactly? Invites expansion and signals patience. Silence plus a tuned gaze says, I'm giving your words room. Mirroring gaze patterns, subtly matching another person's cadence of looking and averting, builds rapport because humans like people who move like them. Don't mimic literally. Instead, mirror energy. If the speaker glances up when searching for a word, a brief matching glance can feel synchrony. If they look down while describing something private, lower your gaze slightly to match their intimacy. This kind of attunement is relational glue when used with respect. Listening posture matters almost as much as gaze. The listening triangle is a helpful image. Orient your shoulders toward the person. Keep your feet grounded and tilt your head slightly. That tilt does important work. It softens a face, opens the ear canal, and signals curiosity. Avoid multitasking postures. Checking a phone, glancing at a watch, or arranging papers creates micro-signals of disengagement. If you must check something, apologize quickly and return your eyes to the other person. Little repair moves preserve trust more than pretending nothing happened. Technology complicates everything. On video calls, the natural tendency is to look at the person's picture on screen rather than the camera, which reads as avoided eye contact to others. To convey directness, practice glancing to the camera for short clusters when making key points and to the screen when listening. Use split attention gracefully. When you take notes, let your eyes shift downward for a beat and then return. If you plan to type, warn the speaker. I'll take a couple quick notes. So your gaze shifts aren't misread as indifference. You can train these skills with a few simple exercises. The 2-minute focus drill is immediate and effective. Set a timer for 2 minutes and ask someone to speak about a neutral topic, a hobby, a recent walk. Your task is pure listening. Keep your gaze relaxed and clustered. Use only small vocal encouragers and take no notes. After 2 minutes, summarize what you heard in one sentence and ask one question that shows you are tracking feeling or motive, not just facts. This trains your mind to resist rehearsal and to map attention to content. The pause and reflect drill builds comfort with silence. Have a partner tell a short story and practice letting a 2-second silence follow each sentence before you react. Know how often the speaker adds detail in the quiet. In conversation, these added details often contain the most revealing material. Things people say when they feel your attention is stable. Repair is also a core skill. If you notice you are distracted, your gaze wandered, you interrupted, your face tightened, own it quickly. Sorry, my mind drifted for a second. Can you repeat that last part? Short acknowledgments rebuild connection because they demonstrate meta-awareness and respect. People forgive small lapses more readily than they forgive indifference. Reading microsignals requires caution. Increased blink rate, averted gaze, or a sudden hardening around the mouth can indicate discomfort, defensiveness, or thought processing. But single signals don't equal truth. Look for clusters and changes relative to baseline. If someone's pattern changes, for example, they start avoiding eye contact midway through a topic, it's often an invitation to slow down or check in. A gentle intervention like, "You seem hesitant. Do you want to take a different turn?" honors boundaries and open space. Finally, listening is an offering rather than a technique. The most magnetic listeners are not flawless technicians. They are people who are genuinely curious and generous with attention. Your goal is not to score points for perfect eye contact, but to let another human feel less alone with their thoughts. Eye patterns, nods, well-timed silence, and gentle repair are the tools. Empathy is the art. Practice these tools in low-stakes settings, coffee lines, small talk at events, team huddles, so they become natural when it matters. Over time, you'll notice a quiet ripple effect. People share more, misunderstandings will reduce, and your conversations will feel deeper. And when you speak, your listeners, because you practice giving attention, will be more ready to give it back. Chapter 8. Touch is the most intimate sentence the body can write, and because of that intimacy, it carries enormous power for comfort, for trust, for persuasion, and for conflict. A hand on the shoulder can steady a colleague or read as a takeover. A brief touch on the forearm can make an apology land as sincere or feel like manipulation. This chapter treats touch as a trained practice, powerful when used respectfully, dangerous when used carelessly. We'll look at what touch communicates, how cultures and contexts change its meaning, and how to use touch ethically to connect, ground, and repair. Start with the basics. Touch is perceptually and neurologically special. Unlike most other signals, touch is direct and immediate. It travels along tactile nerves to brain areas tied to emotion and memory. That's why comforting touches feel physically calming, and why unpleasant touches are remembered vividly. Touch carries a double message, physical sensation and social meaning, and the listener interprets both at once. The same pat on the back that reads as encouragement among teammates might be intrusive with a stranger. The two most important rules are consent and calibration. Never assume consent, and always calibrate by watching for clusters of signals that show comfort or discomfort. Handshakes are a good place to practice both rules because they are nearly universal in many professional settings and easy to control. A good handshake is brief, firm but not crushing, and ends quickly so both parties can return to conversational alignment. It's a ritual that signals mutual recognition and readiness to engage. But be alert. Handshakes are changing in norms, sometimes replaced by elbow taps, bows, or verbal greetings. And during times of health concern, people may prefer no touch at all. When in doubt, offer your hand and be ready to withdraw gracefully. A light nod coupled with a warm smile is a respectful alternative. Practice handshake variations. The classic, the two-handed used sparingly. It can read as overly familiar. And the brief palm-to-palm consent handshake. Notice how each feels and how people respond. Casual, supportive touch, a brief pat on the forearm, a hand to the shoulder, can signal empathy and presence. The most effective uses are small, momentary, and matched to the relationship. For example, after someone shares difficult news, a brief touch near the elbow while you say, "I'm here," often grounds the interaction in human care. The elbow is a safer place in many cultures than the shoulder or upper back, which can be too intimate. Use your peripheral vision and the person's posture as signals. If they lean away, cross their arms, or stiffen, step back. If they lean toward you or maintain open posture, a soft touch is more likely to be welcome. Romantic or affection-based touch follows different rules and usually requires explicit or implicit consent established over time. Even then, context matters. A touch in public may be perfectly fine between partners, but read differently in a workplace. Boundaries are not just personal preferences. They're also shaped by power dynamics. A manager who places a hand on a subordinate's back risks creating discomfort or erring perceptions of favoritism. Because power asymmetries complicate consent, err on the side of non-contact in professional hierarchies, unless the other person explicitly invites it. Therapeutic touch, the kind used by healthcare workers, massage therapists, or physical trainers, operates within clear ethical frameworks and explicit consent. Those frameworks make tactile contact safe and effective. If you work in a role that involves therapeutic touch, follow training and protocols. If you don't, borrow the ethical logic. Explain what you intend to do, ask for permission, and check in during and after the touch. Simple language. May I place my hand here? Models respect and often increases trust because people appreciate being asked. There are also tactical, small uses of touch that support leadership and presence when used ethically. A brief touch to the forearm while offering encouragement before a meeting can increase perceived support and cooperation in some groups. Slight, consensual touch that coincides with praise tends to make the positive message stick. But these are high-stakes moves. They should be used rarely and always with attention to power dynamics and culture. If you're leading a diverse team, get to know individual preferences casually. Some people like a handshake. Some prefer a nod. How do you like to be greeted? That kind of question both gathers data and signals respect. Repairing misused touch deserves its own attention because mistakes happen. If you notice a person flinch, avert their gaze, or otherwise show discomfort after a touch, stop immediately and verbally acknowledge it. I'm sorry, I misread that. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Short, sincere acknowledgments reduce the awkwardness and show emotional responsibility. Avoid long defenses or rationalizations. The moment belongs to the other person, and ownership is disarming. Cultural differences change everything about touch. In some cultures, public displays of affection are common. In others, any non-familial touch is taboo. Personal space norms and gender norms also shape how touch is received. When traveling or working cross-culturally, observe local norms carefully and mirror conservatively. If you're unsure, ask a culturally knowledgeable colleague or choose a non-contact greeting until you learn what's appropriate. Touch also intersects with other nonverbal channels. For example, the tone of your voice and the expression on your face during a touch must align to avoid mixed signals. A warm smile and a steady, soft tone make a supportive touch more likely to be interpreted as caring. A rushed tone or a tight jaw, while touching, can be perceived as coercive. Think of touch as part of a compound sentence. The words, the voice, the face, and the touch must agree. There are practical exercises that build tactile intelligence without overstepping. Start with awareness drills. Over a week, note every time you initiate touch, who you touched, where, why, and what the other person's reaction was. This builds pattern recognition. Next, practice consent phrases until they feel natural. Is it okay if would you like a pat on the shoulder? Saying these aloud in lower stakes contexts, with close friends who expect such humor, trains your muscle memory for asking in more consequential situations. Another exercise focuses on grounding through self-touch. When you feel anxious, a gentle, deliberate touch to your own forearm or a hand pressed lightly to the chest over the sternum can shift your nervous system toward calm. This self-haptic practice is private, non-invasive, and effective for centering before a presentation or difficult conversation. Combine it with diaphragmatic breathing and a soft exhale to downregulate adrenaline. Finally, never forget legal and ethical contexts. Sexual harassment laws and workplace policies exist because touch can be misused. Know your organization's rules and act within them. In any situation where touch could be misconstrued, default to verbal empathy and clear boundaries. Touch is neither inherently good nor bad. It's a human resource that must be stewarded. When used with consent, sensitivity, and cultural humility, it's one of the fastest ways to convey care, to soothe arousal, and to create connection. When used thoughtlessly, it can harm relationships and trust. Learn to read the room, ask when appropriate, practice small consensual touches, and use self-haptic grounding for your own regulation. In that balanced way, touch becomes an honest instrument, close, human, and deeply grounding. In the next chapter, we'll bring the parts together: voice, face, gesture, space, gaze, and touch, and explore how to design an integrated presence for interviews, negotiations, and leadership moments. Chapter 9. Everything you've learned so far, breath, posture, pitch, facial congruence, gestures, proxemics, gaze, and touch, matters most when they work together. Integrated presence is not a list of behaviors to toggle on and off. It's a fluid orchestration of multiple channels, so that your inner intent, your body, and your voice all point in the same direction. In high-stakes moments, interviews, negotiations, leadership speeches, or crucial one-on-ones. That alignment is a difference between being heard and being remembered, between influencing outcomes ethically and merely performing. This chapter shows how to design that integrated presence, how to rehearse it without losing authenticity, and how to recover when things go off script. Start with your intent. Presence begins inside. Before you change posture or practice vocal exercises, clarify your purpose in the interaction. Are you there to learn, to persuade, to build trust? When intent is clear, your nonverbal choices become meaningful. For example, if your goal is to invite collaboration, your proxemics, facial softness, and open-handed gestures will differ from the stance you take to assert a firm negotiation position. Spend a minute writing a single-line intention before any important meeting. I want to leave this room with mutual understanding about the next steps. Or, my aim is to secure a fair agreement while preserving the relationship. That line becomes your North Star. Build a short pre-performance routine that takes you from baseline to prepared. The best routines are quick, repeatable, and embodied. Mine is simple. 3 diaphragmatic breaths with a 4 to 6 inhale to exhale ratio, a 2-second posture check, feet grounded, ribs over pelvis, a 5-second humming warm-up to place resonance, and a final micro gesture, a fingertip pinch near the sternum. That means center. Use whatever ritual feels like you, a small stretch, a moment of eye softening, or a whispered affirmation. The ritual's job is not superstition. Its job is to cue the body and brain to shift into an aligned state. Frame your opening. The first 30 seconds set the tone for everything that follows. Use them. Stand or sit with an anchored posture. Take 1 control breath and begin with concise, clear opening line. In interviews, that might be a short professional summary, deliver with calm pace and a slight lowering of pitch to convey steadiness. In negotiations, open with a statement that names mutual gain and set a collaborative frame. I'd like us to find a solution that keeps both teams moving forward. Your voice, face, and gesture should match that frame. Measured breath, soft facial openness, and moderate, illustrative gestures that point toward shared goals. Layer channels intentionally. Don't overload. For any given moment, pick 1 dominant channel and 2 supportive ones. For example, when you deliver a key data point, let voice be dominant. Slightly lower pitch, slowed pace, a pause before the statistic, while supported with a small, anchoring gesture and steady eye contact. When you want to invite a personal story, make the face and gaze dominant. Soften the eyes, lean in slightly, while your voice follows with warmth and a reduced volume. This triage keeps your presence from becoming noisy and helps listeners focus on what you want them to take away. Use pauses as architecture. Pauses let your listeners digest, and they allow your body to reset. A pause after a question projects confidence and invites response. A pause before a critical sentence builds anticipation. Use silence strategically rather than to cover discomfort. During a negotiation, for instance, when you made an offer, resist filling the silence. Keep your posture open, breathe calmly, and watch for micro shifts in the other person. Often silence produces more honest information than rushed replies. Monitor feedback in real time. Integrated presence is interactive. You are never only sending signals. You are also reading the room. Look for clusters. Someone's jaw tightening while their gaze drops. A colleague leaning back while their shoulders tense. A buyer mirroring your hand position. Those cues tell you whether your frame is landing. If the feedback is neutral or positive, proceed. If you sense resistance or confusion, slow down, clarify, and use small repair moves. Soften your vocal tone. Open your palms. Restate the point in a simpler metaphor or ask a clarifying question. Practice repair scripts so you can own missteps without derailing the interaction. If you notice you come across as brusque, say, "I realize it sounded abrupt. Let me rephrase." If you misread someone's cue and touched inappropriately, acknowledge quickly, "I'm sorry. I misread that. I appreciate your patience." Short, direct ownership both models emotional intelligence and restores trust more quickly than defenses or explanations. Prepare 3 adaptable stories. Stories shift the room and make points sticky. Have a short anecdote for each high-stakes context. 1 professional, a lesson learned. 1 personal, a brief vulnerability that humanizes you. And 1 metaphor, a simple image that explains your logic. Keep them concise, 45 to 90 seconds, and practice them with voice, gesture, and facial congruence. Notice which parts you emphasize verbally and how your hands or posture naturally support those beats. The goal is not theatrical storytelling, but practice authenticity. Stories that fit you and that you can tell in your voice without strain. Calibration across mediums matters. In person, space and gestures can be larger. On video, compress gestures and focus more on facial expressivity and vocal clarity. On the phone, where visual cues are absent, your breath and pitch carry extra weight. Smile before you speak and use clear, energized cadence. Adapt your pre-performance routine slightly depending on the medium. Humming for in-person warmth, a throat lubricating sip of water for phone, a quick camera check for video. Ethics is not an afterthought. Integrated presence is a powerful influence tool, and with power comes responsibility. Use these skills to create clarity, to lift others, to negotiate fairly, and to build honest rapport. Avoid using nonverbal mastery to coerce, deceive, or exploit vulnerabilities. If you feel tempted to manipulate, step back and reevaluate your purpose. Good presence should leave everyone in the room better informed, not worse off. Finally, rehearse with feedback. Record your key opening in 1 story, then watch as if you're someone else. Note 1 thing to keep and 1 thing to adjust. Better yet, practice with a trusted partner and ask for 3 specific observations: how your voice landed, what the face suggested, and whether gestures clarified or distracted. Small, focused iterations, 10 minutes a day for a week. Produce more durable change than sporadic marathon rehearsals. Integrated presence is less about perfect technique and more about consistent alignment. It's the way your breath, face, voice, hands, and space cohere around your intent, so that the people across from you don't just hear words. They feel them and understand their implication. Use the tools in this book to expand your expressive palette, but always let your values steer the performance. When your presence is shaped by clarity, compassion, and curiosity, it becomes one of the kindest and most effective tools you possess. In the final chapter, we'll pull everything together with a practical plan to continue practicing, a checklist you can use before any important interaction, and a gentle reminder about the slow, steady work becoming more present. Chapter 10. If the earlier chapters built the scaffolding, breath and posture, resonance and prosody, facial honesty, gestures that clarify, space that supports, gaze that listens, touch that respects, and integrated presence, this final chapter is a map for the journey ahead. Learning the science of voice and body language is not an event. It is a practice. The skills in this book compound slowly and generously. A minute a day becomes a habit, and habits become a temperament. What follows is a practical, human guide to carry these skills into your life without turning them into a checklist of performances. Think of this as an invitation to lifelong apprenticeship rather than a finishing line. Start with rhythm. Skill without rhythm becomes brittle. Build routines that anchor your practice to daily life. Choose 3 small rituals you could do every day. A morning 2-minute breath and posture check, an afternoon 5-minute vocal warm-up, and an evening 3-minute reflection on one interpersonal moment that surprised you. These are tiny investments with outsized returns. The breath routine primes your nervous system. The vocal warm-up keeps your instrument healthy and flexible. The reflection loop trains your observational mind, so you learn from lived experience rather than abstract rules. Practice with purpose. The most effective training follows cycles of intention, action, and feedback. Set a short, specific goal each week. For example, I will use 3 purposeful gestures in my team update, or I will hold 2 beat eye contact clusters in conversations. After each interaction, take 30 seconds to note what worked, what fell off, and 1 micro adjustment for next time. Keep a single-page notebook or a notes app entry titled Presence Practice and log 1 line per day. Over weeks, you'll have a visible archive of progress that simply didn't exist before. Design low-risk labs. Your workplace and social life are full of micro-experiments. Use them. Volunteer to give a brief update in a meeting and test calibrated gestures and measure pace. Practice active listening in a coffee line by summarizing a barista's small story back to them. Give 2 concise compliments that are fully sincere and notice how touch and gaze can amplify them. These experiments train muscles and social intuition without the pressure of a keynote or a performance. They also make learning social and fun because you see real reactions that teach faster than theory alone. Cultivate feedback partners. Growth happens faster when another person holds a mirror. Find 1 or 2 trusted colleagues, friends, or mentors who will give you candid, compassionate feedback. Share your weekly goal and ask for 1 observation after an interaction. Make the request specific. Tell me 1 thing I did that made my point clearer, and accept the answer without defending. If honest feedback feels scarce, record short clips, 30 to 90 seconds. On your phone, watch them back, and note 1 change and 1 strength. Video is merciless and generous. It shows you what you feel and how it lands on others. Respect the ethical frame. The tools in this book amplify influence. With influence comes responsibility. Use your presence to clarify, not to coerce, to connect, not to exploit. Ethical presence is transparent. You aim to be persuasive by better explaining, listening, and building mutual understanding, not by manipulating hidden triggers or eroding autonomy. Before any high-stakes interaction, check your motive. If your intention would feel wrong if the roles were reversed, reconsider your tactics. Presence is a means to shared outcomes, not a cloak for private advantage. Learn to repair quickly. Missteps will happen. A gesture that reads as impatience, a phrase that misses its mark, a touch that overreaches. The fastest route to recovery is simple acknowledgement, brief, direct, and human. I noticed I sounded abrupt. Let me rephrase. Or, I'm sorry about that gesture. I didn't mean to interrupt. Short ownership disarms defensiveness and models emotional maturity. Build a mental toolkit of repair lines you can use without over-explaining, so that awkwardness doesn't calcify into distance. Keep curiosity as your compass. People are not puzzles to be solved. They are context to be met with curiosity. Every person you meet has a baseline pattern. Their default posture, their conversational tempo, their cultural norms. Use your observational skills to tune in and adapt, not to reduce them to a set of predictable moves. Ask about preferences openly when appropriate. How do you like to receive feedback? Or, do you prefer we greet with a handshake or a nod? These small questions build psychological safety and deepen rapport faster than any rehearsed gesture. push the boundaries gently. As you grow comfortable with basic practices, experiment with bolder integrations. Slow down, create gravity in negotiation. Use a well-timed pause to invite honesty, or tell a 60-second story in which your voice, face, and hands crescendo and resolve. Pull back to evaluate how these moves land and whether they align with your values and goals. Mastery is not showmanship. It's the ease of choosing the right tool at the right time. Honor your body as the primary instrument. Vocal health, hydration, posture, and sleep shape your presence more than any amount of coaching. If you find your voice tired, rest it. If tension accumulates in your shoulders, use movement and breath to reset. Physical fitness and regular movement widen your expressive range and stamina. Treat your instrument as an ally, not an afterthought. Bring cultural humility into every room. Nonverbal norms vary. What reads as engaged and warm in one culture can feel invasive in another. Learn local norms when you travel or work across cultures. And when in doubt, mirror more conservatively. Asking simple, respectful questions about preferences signals more respect than assuming your way is universal. Finally, be patient with yourself. Presence is learned in small increments. You will have leaps and plateaus. Celebrate incremental wins. A clearer conversation, a meeting that didn't escalate, a compliment that landed as intended. Those are the real markers of change. Over time, the cumulative effect of small, steady practice transforms not just your public communication, but your inner experience. You'll find yourself more calm under pressure, quicker to listen instead of react, and more able to move people toward constructive outcomes. This book began with the assertion that voice and body language are not tricks, but habits rooted in human physiology and social cognition. It ends with a reminder. The point of learning these habits is not to perform perfection, but to cultivate presence, the kind that makes others feel understood, decisions clearer, and moments more humane. Take one practice from this chapter and start tomorrow. Breathe, stand, speak, listen, repair, and be curious. That's all it takes to begin changing how the world hears you.